Thank you for inviting me here. Special thanks to Sanatana Dharma Foundation, especially Sachin Kejriwal, Kalyan Vishwanathan, and all the other wonderful volunteers who make this happen time and time again. I'm really honored. Since 95, on a full-time basis, my own journey, which I shared part of my journey with you, but my own journey has consisted of trying to understand the true history of our culture, the true philosophy and metaphysics of our culture, the true yoga and the true sadhana, the true tantra, the different schools of our culture. Why these are not properly understood today, where the distortion came from, what to do about it, because without a proper diagnosis, you cannot have a treatment. If your diagnosis is incorrect, then your treatment is also not going to work. So while a lot of energy goes from so many of our people trying to do something, I have focused on a better analysis and understanding, in other words, a better diagnosis of where these problems come from in the first place, why they are there. And in this I started using a methodology which I practiced in my career. Once I used to be a management consultant, looking at industry analysis and coming up with strategic plans for large clients, AT&T, these kind of people. So when you look at an industry, you look at who are all the players, what is the delivery chain, who are the suppliers, who are the users, and so on. So I started looking at the study of dharma and the study of India as an industry. Who studies India? Who are the professors? Who are the think tanks? Who are the seminaries? Who are the government policy makers? Who studies India and dharma? Why they study? What they study? Why they reach certain conclusions? What is the consequence of these conclusions? Who funds them? So I wanted to build a whole portfolio of the study of India and its civilization as it happens in the West, because that is then exported to India also. So I started building a large database of who's who and what is what in the study of India. Because what you see often on the surface may look like one thing, but when you know the deeper relationships of those people, their policies, who they are working for, what is their ideology, what is their politics, then you understand it differently. So I feel that I found that there is a lot of misunderstanding on the part of our leaders concerning our own dharma, concerning who's studying it properly, who's not studying it properly. I found our guru is not very interested in this kind of analysis, and I found a lot of our political leaders, our community leaders, not really well informed about the big picture and in a deep way about the state of our dharma. So I started my own quest with my foundation and getting people to help and all that. And I found a very troubling scenario. I found that there are not only just some random individuals who are depleting the legitimacy of dharma, but institutions, organizations, deep ideologies, undermining not only mandir, but gurus, symbols, sacred texts, deities, paramparas, sampradayas, each of them taken systematically one by one, taken apart and distorted and presented in a way that would make young Hindus ashamed and leave their tradition or start diluting their identity with crazy ideas like everything is the same, and so why does it matter if I have a Hindu identity or I don't have a Hindu identity? All kinds of confusions like that. So as part of this journey, I've been writing 100, 150 articles online, various publications, books, and in a typical year, this year I've given maybe 20 talks, 25 talks this year so far. And I've been doing this since mid-90s, going around talking. Because I learn a lot from the questions, I learn a lot from the emails that come, so I'm not sitting in an isolated ivory tower dreaming up things, it's always interactive. And since I'm extremely open and critical of a whole lot of things that are going on, I expect to be attacked. I expect people to take me on. And that is a learning experience also. because people who are opposed to you also educate you and teach you by opposing you, and then your arguments and your research have to become better and better. We had a tradition called Purva Paksh, which we forgot. The Purva Paksh tradition meant that you must study the other school which is opposing you. And you must understand their arguments why they're opposing you. You must learn all their arguments just as good as they learn, they know them. And you must know how to argue from their point of view. And then you must, standing on your own position, your own siddhanta, your own foundations, your own framework and worldview, you then have to give a response after really understanding what they're saying. That is the Purva Paksha system. So it used to be very active because the way Vedantins debated Buddhists and Jains and Mimamsika and one school of Vedanta versus another school, it is normal part of training. But the tradition of Purva Paksha today needs to be applied not to Buddhists and to Mimamsa, these are not the threats. They need to be applied to the dominant civilizations which are competing against us, which is not only the Judeo-Christian tradition, but also the Western Enlightenment from which comes the notion of secularism. And secularism has got a lot of confusion. My next book, which is out in October, gives you a whole dharmic critique about secularism and many other modern fashionable ideas. But we have to understand the point of view of Judeo-Christianity, of the Enlightenment secular movement, and the postmodernism, the very fashionable postmodernism which has taken on a lot of Indian intellectuals in a very fashionable way. This Purva Paksha has not been done. Very few people in India are really able to stand on a dharmic foundation and look at the West very courageously. Either if they are standing on a dharmic foundation, they're looking internally. They're saying, we don't need to see others, why should we worry about others, we only need to know our own truth, things like that. That is not what the Purva Paksha tradition called for. It called for studying others and being able to take a courageous stand and arguing back. That is how our tradition is. Or you will find people who are critiquing other cultures. There is a lot of post-colonial scholars, they critique the West, but they do it using a secular framework. In other words, they're critiquing the West using West's own theories and critiques. So in a sense, they're just mimicking the West's own self-critique. They're not really doing it from a dharmic point of view. So I've tried to do that, and this is part of my own journey for myself, learning as I go. Now, the book that I want to talk about is one of several books that I'm writing. I intend to, there is another one coming out in October, as I said, and then 2 more for next year, and so on. But this book, which just came out a few months ago, is now in its 3rd reprint already. And it's called Breaking India. And this book is the result of a very systematic study as to who are the forces, Indian and non-Indian, whose work is to break up the sense of unity in India, the sense of a common history, the sense of a common itihas, and the sense of a common dharma, breaking up the sampradayas, breaking up the paramparas, breaking up the family system, breaking up the rituals and the holidays. Now they're being downsized. New foreign rituals and holidays are coming in. New fashions are coming in. Changing, reinterpreting and distorting the symbols in many ways. So this is the intellectual breakup, the emotional, psychological, and intellectual breakup of India, which can then lead to a physical breakup also. So this Breaking India project suddenly galvanized in my in my life. About a decade ago, I was at Princeton. I lived there, and I was having lunch with a few scholars, and then another scholar dropped John Dane, and I was introduced to him. And this gentleman said that he's just come back from India, so he's happy to see me and had a good time there. So we started talking about, what he was doing in India. I asked him what he's doing in India. And he said I was there for the Afro-Dalit project. So I had never heard of such a thing, Afro-Dalit project. And I asked him, what is this Afro-Dalit project? So he said, well, don't you know, this Afro-Dalit project, we are running this project in India to try and teach the Dalits that they are actually of African origin, and they are the blacks of India, and the non-Dalits are the whites of India. So the American experience of white, black, slavery experience is what is the experience going on in India. We want to teach them their true history as a history of slavery by non-Dalits of India. So I thought this is weird and crazy and extreme, and I mean, I have a lot of sympathy for anybody who's oppressed and want to do a lot, and my foundation has done a lot to help such people, but I don't think that distorting history and manipulating them and making them fight each other is a good way to do it. So I was quite concerned, and I got to know this person, and I got to visit his office, and I wanted to find out who all are running this